What was your biggest challenge getting I Eat to market?
It's a really good question. Funnily enough, it wasn't what you would think it would be. So actually, the supermarkets were really up for doing this. The getting the supply chain was tricky, but it wasn't impossible. We wanted a really ethical supply chain, so it took a really long time to kind of work with the farmers and make sure that they're feeding the animals properly and giving them room to graze during the day and things like that. That wasn't the hardest bit. The hardest bit was actually overcoming issues like with the EDL. So we get like a weekly death threat. We get, I've had to change my number like 3-4 times. Like that's probably been the hardest thing. And that's probably a reason why people haven't come forward and said they're doing halal. Normally halal hides behind like a name and a brand. And actually you've never really have a person coming forward and saying, I do halal and I'm really proud of it. That's a challenge that I'm actually really happy to take on, is because I see it as necessary. I see it as necessary if we're going to clean the industry up and give people a face that they can trust and respect. And it gives people the reassurance that their food is genuinely halal, then that's a necessary thing that we're going to have to do. And it's been 6 months and no one's tried to kill me. So it's, so far so good. But that's actually probably been the biggest challenge, and actually trying to convince my parents that it was a worthwhile thing to do when they see all of the kind of the scary stuff. But actually, it's so far so good.
Where do you want to progress to? Where do you want to go with the industry?
Good question. For those of you who don't know, we do things like lasagna, shepherd's pie, pizza, pasta, just normal, everyday British food, but made halal and made ethical. And we've stuck with dinner to start off with, so the dinner occasion. Actually, I think the lunch occasion is really, really exciting, because that's probably the time that Muslims are compromising the most when they're out. It's kind of like, okay, you have a choice between a tuna mayonnaise sandwich or a cheese and onion sandwich, and that's basically your daily choice every day of the week. And so we'd like to get into the sort of food to go arena. I'd really love to more than anything, I'd love to set up a foundation called the Khadija Foundation and use some of the money from the business to support projects in the UK. And I think it'd be really cool. That doesn't necessarily need to be Muslim projects. I think it'd be really cool if you had a halal business that contributed income to a Muslim foundation, and that foundation supported projects like Shelter, for example, just national good projects that support the actual UK community, because that's where we are and we're home, and make a positive contribution to society, not necessarily just for Muslims. So that's actually the big sort of next big thing that we're working on as well.
Will we see you opening up somewhere in Rusholme and retailing in Rusholme?
Oh yeah. So here's the thing, right? We at the moment we're in 50 plus stores. We're in all over London, Birmingham, and Leicester. We weren't planning to come up north until a bit later, but Bradford hounded their stores so much that we actually Tesco broke their rules and gave us the Bradford and Huddersfield store. So really, it's a challenge to you guys. If the Yorkshire guys can do it, then I'm sure you guys could too. But basically, that's what you need to do: is basically petition your Tesco and Sainsbury's in Manchester and in and around Manchester, and we'll make it happen. Inshallah, like I said, I can't really say who. Well, I can't really give too much details, but we've signed with the other 2 supermarkets, and those 2 have very big footprints up north. So I'm hoping that we should be up north very soon. But in the meantime, it wouldn't help to push your Tesco store if possible, please. Thanks.
What was the one thing, and you talk about obstacles that you came across, but what kept you going?
I'm only half joking when I say hunger. Like every year was kind of like, guys, seriously, halal shepherd's pie, why is no one doing this? And every year that went past, it was like, okay, no one's doing it, I think I'm going to have to do it. So that's a half serious response. The other half is, like I said earlier, is the intention. So for me, it was always the intention to do something good, and I recognise that this is definitely a way to do something good. Had one of the greatest fears ever happened for me, which was waking up one day, opening the BBC website, and seeing your business idea splashed all over the news. Had that actually happened after about a month of sulking, I probably would have found something else. But this, for me, made the most sense. I love food, and I wanted a shepherd's pie, and no one else was making it. So women just have to roll their sleeves up and get on and do it. I actually have no food industry experience whatsoever. That's the really funny thing. When we sat down with Sainsbury's, thankfully we had a team of people who are ex-Marks and Spencers who are able to kind of help us. But we actually said yes to the Sainsbury's listing without having a factory. So we actually said, yeah, we're fine, we can do this. And they said, okay, so you're okay to launch in February? We're like, yeah, no problem. Yeah, we do this and we can do that, and yeah, no problem. And we left, and there was a few moments of just sort of high-fiving each other. And then we realized that, okay, one of us would probably better do some work. But really the motivation for getting there was that moment. So you visualize that moment of actually landing like a supermarket deal and what that felt like. And knowing that you were so close. Every year it felt like I was so close. When I told you about that, in my head it was probably only a few months away, even though it was actually quite a few years away. But that's great. I mean, that's the whole. For me, that was the whole thing. Is just trying to keep it as close to you as possible, and as real a dream as possible. So close that you could almost kind of touch it. And then, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. You just have to keep plugging away, really. So I'm kind of like the poster girl for what happens if you just keep having a dream, even though it takes 8 years. I came up with an idea yesterday, and my business partner said, okay, so we can see that in like 2021. It's like, yeah, it'll probably take about that long.
Can you tell us very briefly what the process was? Sort of just, obviously you had the idea, but in terms of business idea and where that went and how it came about.
At the time, what I was trying to do, and I use this analogy of a jigsaw, so whenever you're trying to set up a business, or whenever you're trying to do a jigsaw, you always kind of get your corner pieces in first. And that was, I guess, for the first few years, what I was trying to do was just get the 4 cornerstones that kind of held everything together. So for me, that was getting the right team in place, getting the finances in place, getting the supply chain in place, and then getting the brand story and the brand proposition correct. And once I had those 4 sort of corner pieces in place, and it felt like I had some structure to it, I then started to get the kind of the outer rim. And that's the connections between those 4 cornerstones. So who's going to do your packaging, who's going to do your PR, all of that kind of stuff. And actually the key is to leave your job at a time when you definitely have those 4 corner pieces and maybe some of the outer pieces, but don't wait until you've got every single piece in place, because you're never going to have that. You're never going to have every single piece in place when you have to make the leap. It's always a bit of a judgment call. The mistake is having left your job when you haven't even got those basic 4 in, because you will probably fail, and then go back to thinking that that's not destined for you, or that you're not meant to be an entrepreneur. And really it was just because you didn't have the 4 pieces in place. Those are the 4 big things that we absolutely needed to do. And once we did that, the rest of it was history, really. But those are the things that took the longest.